Have you ever felt that you have been in a relationship you have outgrown? Today on 518 Reset podcast, we will talk about how people stay in relationship they have outgrown. We have Maria Mall and my co-host Judith Indu, who will be sharing their thoughts and their experience, their perspective about what are some of the signs that they can recognize that they have outgrown a relationship, what are some of the consequences they have to deal with if they have outgrown a relationship, and what are some of the steps they should take to come out of that kind of relationship and work on their personal growth. So welcome, Maria. And
I'm so excited about this conversation because I know there's someone out there that feels very stuck and in a relationship because they've had a history of that relationship being wonderful. And I can't wait to talk about this wonderful topic. Maria, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you. I'm happy to join this.
To begin with, we're not necessarily talking about abusive relationships, right? It could be abusive, but it's not all about abusive. It's about relationships that in general are kind of dead, like people being in dead-end relationships. Of course, in cases that relationships are abusive, it's very clean and clear for people to understand that maybe they need to go, even though not everyone would leave a relationship, even when there's abuse, because there's a difference between knowing that something is not good for you and actually taking the decision to leave that thing that's not good for you. So, Maria, you have a psychology background, a psychology education. What are some of those signs that can tell someone that it's time to move forward?
I think that the signs could look different for everyone, depending on the partner that they're with. I think sometimes it's just that excitement that used to be in the relationship, the excitement to do things together, the excitement to spend time together. It just does not feel as happy as it used to. So there's just a change in the dynamic.
Right.
Yeah. I think that probably, might be one of the first signs someone may notice, right? And in other cases, I think it might just be, even frustration over just different things. Maybe, a partner is not fulfilling certain expectations that you may have.
Right.
And,
or they might not be feeling like connected.
Right.
Or they are doing things together, but they may not be doing it with that like excitement or enjoyment that they used to have, right? So that's one of the, I guess, like things people can look at to see why they're not feeling excited to be around someone anymore, right?
Right. I mean, that's a great point. Even in my experience for the relationships that have ended for me, the very first sign was that exhaustion. Like the person exhausts you instead of excites you. When that starts happening, I really start asking myself that questions like, is it about communication? Is it just about the little signs about the person's character, which to me, the biggest would be words not matching action, a pattern of repeatedly lying that makes you just give up. You know what I heard?
Yeah.
A lady actually told me that it was laziness that ended her relationship. That her partner was so lazy. Her partner was so lazy, spent the entire day playing video games, and she had a lot of drive for what the future held for her, to the point where she could no longer take that kind of laziness. And she decided that, you know what, I can cook, clean, do everything, pay bills 50-50, clean up after you, and you have zero motivation. So that could be something too, right?
Right. Maybe they're both moving in like a different direction.
Absolutely.
Right.
It sounds like they are.
As far as their interests.
Do you guys also see a point where like people met in college, especially those college relationships where you meet, you're very excited about growing old with one another, but time comes, your priorities change, your vision changes. Do you see people really holding on to that history and not letting go, even though everything about them has completely changed? Could that be a reason?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of time, like, we're just so comfortable in a relationship and we don't know like what's out there that we can actually enjoy. And so just because we are like surrounded by, one person for so long, and we're just so used to, with sometimes like getting like, together, they think they have invested so much of their time, and they were maybe each other's first love, when they met in college. So that's some sort of like a connection they have, but like they're fully not satisfied. They don't feel connected. They're not growing in the same direction. Like you said, your friend, had experience where her partner was, playing video games, and she was doing all other things, and they were not really doing things together that would make them feel connected.
I think it's like the familiarity a lot of times that people have with each other because of that long history. It becomes like that comfort zone. You know what I mean? And humans, this is our, just a general nature of humans. We like to be comfortable. We like to stay in those comfort zones. Not everybody has that drive or to kind of step outside of that comfort zone and really go out.
Right. It's almost like the familiar feels more comfortable than
and that's
the unknown
the case,
future.
Right?
It's a safe
because
zone.
you know all the pros and cons, you know their little quirks and stuff, and you know that you have been okay in, managing with that person. But stepping outside of that and meeting someone completely new, then you have to like restart and, kind of like get to build from scratch.
And people are afraid of starting over.
Right.
Yeah.
So back in the days, I used to hear when I was growing up, like women boasted about the length of their relationship.
And even
they will
now,
tell,
too.
even now,
Like,
they will
a lot
tell
of
you
people
things
talk
like we've
about
been
it,
married for 40 years, 50 years. Even in cases where, especially in Africa, the man beats up the woman in public, drags her naked in public. She would go and boast about the length of her relationship as a mark of success.
But
What do
not
you think about
realizing
that?
how the relationship is going. Like if the husband is beating you, is this a good relationship?
So
to
are
be
we
in,
saying
right?
it's not about the length of the relationship, but the quality of the
the
relationship
quality.
that matters?
Quality, exactly. It doesn't to me, I feel like if there's no connection in a relationship, it doesn't matter like for how long you have been in a relationship. I think connection is very important, and growing in the same direction is also very important for people to stay in relationship.
Right.
Because if you're not growing together, what is the purpose of staying together? Some people are staying just so they can financially get support from one another, right? But that's again that's just a wrong reason to be in a relationship. Because to me, for overall, I think like if you don't have the mental stability with someone and mental that connection, right? I personally would not be able to stay with that person.
I think when it comes to married couples, I will say sometimes children are a big reason as to why people stay for the sake of their children, even if the spouses are not getting along.
Wow. Yeah, children. I can also think of finance in relation to children. If you're a woman that's a stay-at-home mom, you basically probably just depend on the man. And even some stay-at-home dads too, right? You depend on the man or you depend on the woman. You don't have any source of income. Making that decision to leave, I can see how it can be so hard for you because you're thinking about survival, about my survival depends on this person. Why do we have so many divorces of people in their 50s and 60s and 70s? I stay too long.
Yeah. One of the factors I can think of is the age factor too. If you are like in your 40s and you have spent like 15, 16 years, maybe 20 years, with the same person, right? Moving on and finding somebody, maybe, you have that assumption that, leaving this relationship, you may not be able to find better than that. So like that fear of, your age factor, or like I'm getting too old, or I am like too old, like I'm 40, 45 or 50, right? That can also like prevent people, getting out of the relationship that they are not connected anymore.
Sometimes people continue to be stuck because the right person hasn't stepped in to make them question.
That is actually a really good thing, because how would somebody recognize? And maybe like that's
having a
we
third
should ask
person
exactly
to make you think.
Yeah, because like if the train just kind of just continues to stay on this track,
same track,
and there just aren't any wild turns,
and that's
to
all
like
they know.
give you that shake.
That's all they know.
Make you realize that something's like not right. I think that
so having
helps.
it. So are you saying like having that third person come in can someone recognize that they have outgrown a relationship?
Yeah, I think like the third person sometimes can help you, realize that maybe my needs today are very different than what they were, 15, 20 years ago when I first was, with my spouse. And maybe somewhere in that transition of 15, 20 years, your spouse has not, been very focused on the fact that you have evolved and your needs today are very different than they were then. And so, they're not giving you, maybe what you require today. And all of a sudden, this new person, maybe is more observant of your needs and does fulfill some of what you require.
Or excite you now.
Or excites you
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you really need a third person to wake you up to the fact that your relationship is kind of going towards a dead end? If this conversation is resonating with you, we want you to hit that like, subscribe, or follow button on 518 Reset. As always, we bring you the hottest topics and the hottest conversations. Going back to the third person question.
Right.
Do you really have to stay to wait for a third person to bring that wake up call that this thing isn't going the way you want it?
That's actually a really good question. You said either like the third person comes in that make you recognize that, oh, I'm in a relationship, but I'm not fully satisfied or fulfilled, right? You started getting more attention from the other person and you realize what was missing, from your current relationship. But then it can also be, like somebody can just sit and reflect on the things that they have been doing with their partner. And if they feel like, oh, they're exhausted, when they do things, or being around, it's not exciting anymore. They can also recognize that too. But the hardest part is, I think, for people to actually step away from a relationship. I think that's the difficult thing that everyone has to go through.
That third person, though, has led to so many people being killed because
Killed people.
yeah. Because once
feelings?
there's a third person, that love triangle where you watch those murder documentaries
yes.
you,
Yes, I know exactly
you see your
what you're
partner
talking
starts
about.
getting attention and then all of a sudden you kill the person from whom he or she's getting
Yeah,
attention
I know.
But
from.
that can also, let's say, if the third person, comes in the picture, right? That can also try to have two people actually realize that, oh, wait, there is something missing in our relationship. So maybe, if they both kind of want to have the relationship, work out, right? They can actually, so there is time, right? You can save your relationship. Right? And the third person can go out of the picture if the relationship was not too strong or connection was not too strong, right? So that can also help somebody to, rejoin and, start saving their relationship.
Since we spoke about sometimes a partner's just lazy, maybe they're just focused on other things. I think once they, may realize that, hey, I might be losing this person, I think at that point they may want to also step up their game. So you can originally, I guess, save that original relationship because it starts to make that, the spouse feels like, oh, I might lose this person, because they're not, spending as much time with me. Perhaps they're just, going somewhere else. And another point I wanted to make was someone said this to me one time is that the more you take care of something or someone, it was more in reference to things in life, the longer they last, right? So the more you take care of your car, the longer it lasts, right? But if you don't take care of your car, then it's going to break down and you probably have to get a new one. So even when it comes to relationships, the longer that you water that relationship and give it the nutrients that it needs, I think the longer that it can last.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So same thing, that shows if you're watering, right, your plant, right, or your relationship, right, you're giving enough energy, right, you're it's gonna grow, it's gonna make it look like that you guys are growing together. But we're talking about people don't have connections, right?
Yeah.
People don't feel excited anymore.
Sometimes a relationship is not meant to last forever, and that is just the brutal truth.
That's true.
And we need to accept that.
Yeah,
And I
and I
think
mean-
once we accept that, then we can kind of come
Move
to
on.
terms with
Yeah. Because sometimes the version of yourself that fell in love with the person has evolved and
Yeah.
is no longer the same person. You fell in love with someone while you were in high school. Now your values, maybe your goals and your lifestyle has evolved, and the person is exactly still the same person.
I think it's just difficult for people to pin it down. they're like always at denial. I have experienced, a couple that, you know, were not, I guess, connected or doing things together as a family for a long time. But for some reason, they just stayed together. And I personally just felt that they were, maybe there was like a cultural pressure, or like a religion pressure that they had, because they
That's a
weren't
big
doing
one.
things together. They were, like always bickering and like fighting, but somehow, they just like stayed together. And I personally just feel like, there was a lot of pressure from the culture, from families, that what they would think about them. And I think that's one of the factors that people keep, together regardless, how they feel about a relationship.
What she said, it's definitely something I think, like, a lot of us can relate to, especially coming from other cultures. Marriage, divorce, like, these concepts have like completely different meanings in some of where we come from. And it reminds me of a news story that's very active right now in the media. And it took place in India, where this girl decided that it was easier to push her fiance off the cliff and actually kill him, rather than going up to her parents and telling them that she does not want to marry this person, and she, would rather marry another person, or maybe she wants a few years before she ties the knot. So it just talks to some of that peer pressure that we're talking about, or pressure that we get from our parents or our community. And this was, just a 20-year-old. I guess, based on some of the conversations, her prefrontal cortex is not even fully developed. So you can imagine, someone at that age can easily make big mistakes like this because of there not being those, healthy conversations.
Right.
That's a very sad story. And that really reminds me, because growing up, we heard that your parents' advice was the final word that you had to listen to. But I think kids really have to start questioning even their parents, especially when the train of thought is harmful, or the respect for society really harms the person to the point. Like, look at this kid. Just because they did not have the courage to confront the culture, to confront the parents, to confront what has been accepted as the norm of that society, they rather push off this person than confront the real thing. I think we really have to come to a point where we have to start questioning some of the things we've been fed to believe and accept as true and reality. And because I know, even me growing up, I would always say things like, well, my culture says this and I have to do this. But am I really doing it intentionally?
Right.
Like, am I making an intentional decision based on the pros and the cons? I don't know. We really have
Right,
to
like
do
rational decision instead
Yeah.
of like what you have like been programmed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think people are just conditioned to do what they've just, believe is the right thing to do based on what their elders have, I guess, displayed. And so it just sometimes they want to be accepted in the society, so they will continue to conform to a lot of those things, whether or not they're happy inside. I guess sometimes it just doesn't matter.
So I want to like talk about some of the consequences that people have to deal with while they stay in a relationship they have outgrown.
I can think of exhaustion. Like, the person, you just feel exhausted and you resent the person for just, well, you can say no reason, but actually it's built up reasons over the years.
And I think
Happiness.
like you can also be like mentally disturbed too, like angry.
And low self-esteem.
Yeah, low self-esteem too, right?
Emptiness.
No confidence.
Yeah, you feel so
is
empty.
Another one, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's definitely something that'll impact you as a person, whether you realize it.
I feel like having somebody physically around you not necessarily make you feel that you are, with someone. Like you can still feel lonely. And I have experienced, a couple that they stayed together, right? But then I could feel there's emptiness in the room when they stayed together. They didn't talk much, and even they talked to each other. It was very like more of like talking about like kids and what their finances or their bills and all that stuff, right? So I felt like like there's two people sitting in a room, but they both feel lonely.
like they're not excited to be around each other. They're not having like a really good,
That's
healthy,
sad.
fun
They're
conversation.
staying, but outsiders, right? They can observe their behavior, and that can also affect, like,
Even
especially if you
kids.
have kids.
Yeah.
If you have your kids surrounded by you and you're bickering about, different things all the time, like you're fighting and arguing, you may not see or recognize your kids are actually being affected, right? But the kids will, like, absorb all that energy, and they will feel that being in a relationship, it may like change their trajectory of their like lifestyle, right? They may
Right.
not want to get married.
Right.
And I kind of like was in kind of that kind of I guess like phase where I had observed so much of my surrounding, where like people were like not like giving me I guess like a reason to be with somebody, because if they were arguing all the time and fighting all the time, right? The people I was surrounded by, I'm like, is that kind of a relationship is a good relation to be with somebody, right? Like, I'd rather be alone.
I think it's also important to focus on how it affects those around you, especially children, in an unhappy marriage. How does it affect children?
Yeah, that's a great point. When two people are unhappy, especially parents, because kids depend so much on the parents, if they see that they're ignoring each other or just being bitter towards each other, I think it would affect them. I think that's why we have so many grown-ups that say things like, I never wanted to get married. I never saw any example of a happy marriage. Actually, I know there are so many people that say that growing up in a two-parent household is the ideal. That's true. And there are even statistics that say kids in two-parent households do better. But I think people they're analyzing it in the wrong way, because sometimes the healthiest thing you can give your kid is to be in a happy environment. And it doesn't matter whether you're with a partner or not, or whether you're married to their parent or
Right,
not.
or a single parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a single parent and you can provide a healthy home for a kid, that's the ideal. You don't have to necessarily be married to provide that kind of a healthy environment where a kid is growing, if the marriage is terrible.
Right.
Because that would teach the kid the wrong thing. Actually, when a kid sees the parent leave a bad situation, that teaches them something. Having boundaries around how much they can take, it teaches that kid something, that staying in a marriage just because you want to feed societal expectation or feed family's expectation or feed cultural norms or feed certain things, that's not good for a kid.
Right.
But they actually learn a lot from you when you take that step to walk away from something that is bad and damaging.
And I think it's just not your kids. I think like it could be your friends, your family, right? Because if you are in a a relationship you have outgrown, it's it's gonna also affect your friends and family circles too, right? You may be like portraying in front of your friends that you're happily married, but outsiders can actually observe a lot more than you would actually think. Because I mean, I have been I guess like surrounded by people where I have noticed things were just not working out.
I also wanted to mention that, since we're talking about children being affected, I think sometimes it's better to take that step, when the time is appropriate, and let that healing begin for those children and everybody involved. And instead of letting it continue on longer and longer, again, in an unhealthy environment where things are not getting along and you are, maybe bickering with each other day to day, and continuing to create an unhealthy environment, I think the long-term effects of that are a lot more damaging than just that one-time, sit down decision of, hey, this is not working out, we're going to part ways. However, we are still a family and we'll always be a family.
Right.
So the timeliness of taking these decisions matters.
Right. No, that's actually a really good point.
People have different stories they tell
But
themselves.
people have different needs.
People have different needs too.
One thing I have to say is that what I've heard is that anyone in a drastic situation like that where physical, and verbal abuse is involved, it takes that person 7 times to try to leave before they eventually leave,
Yeah.
you know? So maybe once they've gained enough strength mentally, you know, to like really, you know, motivate themselves to like step out, that's what's needed. So I think like when we're talking about these women or men could also be victims of, you know, these situations, I think as outsiders, I think we should have, you know, empathy towards these individuals. And, you know, you may have a friend that has gone through it or is currently going through it. And I think like for me, you know, I will say like at times, you know, you may just get sick of listening to that same person complain all, you know, all this stuff, but they're not making a move.
Right.
You know, but
I've
we have to
experienced that.
I have been in that
My
too.
friend had been, you know, coming back to me talking about the same stuff and, you know, fighting, you know, he's having with his wife, but not taking a move. So I used to get very frustrated. I'm like, you know, you're not taking like any steps like, you know, to move away from it or like move on, right? But I mean, of course, I wasn't in his shoes, right? I don't know what was going on in his mind, what was stopping him,
I
right?
was that woman. I was that woman that complained and complained and told friends the same stories.
Yeah.
Today he's done this and that, and
Yeah.
that and that and that. I stayed. Actually, I even stayed 2 years after the divorce.
You did.
I did.
Interesting.
Legal divorce. So I was that person.
Oh, so you kind of started believing that,
I didn't have options.
right?
I had not created enough options for myself at
or
the
you
time.
may not like had that financial stability.
It was
to actually-
financial option. It was being in a new country here,
Right.
obviously.
No, yeah.
It was not having any family around and real, true, trusted friends that you could count on. And that's why to this day, I talk a lot about creating options for yourself, financial, educational, learn skills that, like learn new skills, like arm yourself educationally, financially, morally, to the point where if somebody's bringing the Bible or I don't care, whatever religion, to try to interpret it to you, to turn things around and twist interpretations of stuff around.
You have brain of your own
You
mind.
have a brain of yours to be like, you know what, that bullshit isn't gonna work with me.
right.
And today when I look back, I'm like, why did I stay? But that's why, Maria, I like your point about let's have some empathy towards these people. I was that person.
What
What
was that
eventually,
point?
trigger you to okay, now it's time to leave? What was that?
It
What
was
was-
a collection of so many other things
Okay.
where you reach a boiling point where you're like, this is it.
I think with a lot of people
Yeah.
could like think like that like we always think like I was talking to you about my friend like not leaving but always complaining about it, not taking any actions. So to me, I feel like you have to be like up to like your neck when like you feel like you cannot
Yeah.
take it anymore.
That's
right?
it.
And now like that's a triggering point for
People really need to have options. You don't have to be like me, because now I look back, I can tell you 100% I was very dumb. Yeah, it was dumb. I can give all the reasons of not having options.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait until it's right here to make the decision.
right.
You can at least listen to the stories of people that have been there, that can
Yeah.
tell you something that will teach you. In my case, honestly, I didn't know anyone that had openly shared at that time, that had shared their story about leaving. I thought about religion. It's interesting. I was the happiest when I left.
You tasted that freedom.
I tasted freedom.
Yeah, and that wind felt great in
It
your
felt
hair.
really good.
I feel like a lot of people in our audience can relate to this because, like you said, thinking about your religion and like how people would think about you, like you knew what was right to do, but you weren't doing it. We talked about the signs, when people are have outgrown relationship. We talk about, why people don't move on. We talk about the consequences, and we shared like so many different, stories about what all of us have experienced throughout our lives. But what do you guys think that what somebody should do? Like, let's say if they have recognized that, this is the time for me to move on. What do you think, guys, that someone should do?
I think talking to a trusted friend or a family member, because like sometimes I think again, if I am the person in this situation and I am feeling all these signs, and different things, but I think somewhere there's still like that confused state, and you can be in that confused state for a long time for many reasons. But sometimes when you start to kind of like, tell someone how you feel and why you feel these things, I think maybe you can get some sort of guidance and reassurance. Like you said, you would be that person today, you know. So maybe that's a start.
Yeah,
talk to
that's a good
somebody
one.
who might have already experienced something like that, you know, that can actually advise you or like, you
Right.
know,
Counseling too can be helpful.
Yeah.
But also the clear decision is not always to pack your bags and leave.
right.
Because there's a difference between problems in a relationship and a relationship that's dead. So ask yourself, is this a problem that can be fixed, or should this be the end of the relationship?
Right.
And also ask yourself, what is this costing me?
Right.
What is staying in that relationship costing me? Because leaving has a cost.
Right.
But staying too also has a cost. What is it costing your peace? What is it costing your happiness? What is it costing your finances? And what is it even costing your future?
Right.
If you're
And
staying in a bad
your-
situation,
you know, your mental health,
your
you know.
mental health.
Yeah. So for our new, like, you know, younger generation, do you think that when they get in a relationship, is there like something that they should be aware of that, you know,
Or what to be on the
it's,
lookout
it,
for.
it may not be like a relationship they get into, right? It may not last forever. And, you know, what are their options? Like you're talking about, you know, having options, like letting, you know, the new generation know that, you know, like being in a relationship it's a good thing, but it's also not the, you know, end of the world, right? And if something isn't working or you don't feel fulfilled, there are options out there. People should not think that, you know, once they are in relationship, no religion, no culture, right? Nothing really should stop them moving on to something better than, you know, better that they deserve.
See, the way I see life is you only have one life to live. Okay. So you can either invest in yourself and invest in healthier relationships and fulfill, you know, your personal, you know, desires and satisfaction while on this earth. Or you can continue to live a miserable, unhappy life until the day you die. So you have two options.
Right. So I think
Yeah,
it's really a
that's
personal
a good
choice
one.
that
Yeah.
everybody should, you know, evaluate their
Yeah,
relationship,
exactly.
right?
At the
Yeah.
end of the
Look
day,
at their
you're the one who has
evaluation.
to take that step.
Right. And even like you were saying, like you talk to a trusted friend, right? I think like it's important for people to, yes, you talk to your friend, but your friend should not make the decision for you.
No, definitely
Right.
not.
You should really like think about some of the things that, you know, are costing you, right? All those things like you should consider, sit back, reflect on, and see what's the best action you want to do. It's not something that, you know, every relationship has to end, right? There are times that people can actually, you know, sit down and resolve their issues and, you know, fix their,
Or talk to
their
a counselor.
relationship, right? Talk to the counselor. But, you know, sometimes it's like kind of too late, right? Like if you let your relationship kind of grow out in two different directions for too long, then, you know, fixing might not be there. But it's really, I think it all depends on like, you know, everybody's relationship, you know, where they are at, what they want from the relationship. And, you know, if there is a time for somebody to save the relationship, what they should do. You know, they
Right.
should really talk to their trusted friend, talk to the counselor, or like get any help, like, you know, talk to somebody who has gone through that kind of experience.
Yeah, and also understand that not every relationship is meant to be for a lifetime.
Right.
Some are meant to be seasonal, some
Yep.
are meant to exist because at a certain point in life, you share certain values and goals, and maybe you outgrow certain things. Not everything is meant to end for a lifetime.
Right.
So one of my friends always says it's a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
I like that.
So the reason, we learn a lot of different things from different people that walk in and out of our lives. And I think some people are just meant to just teach you different lessons in life. And that's their only purpose for entering your life. And season, of course, just a certain time of our lives in which we fit into each other's, you know, life. And after that time has passed, we no longer fit. You know, people can move into different directions. And that doesn't have to be, you know, that, you know, you have to completely cut someone off or just like there's, you know, you're never going to see each other. I think it's just what once existed or the level of closeness that once existed just does not. You know, I think there still could be mutual respect towards each other.
And because
You know?
people miss to understand your point, some would even kill a partner when they try to end a relationship.
Right.
But yeah, some people could be stuck because they're afraid to leave because they're afraid their partner might hurt them. or might hurt their family members because maybe there's like threats involved, like, and hence the whole being empathetic towards those individuals, because we don't really know the full picture. Whatever they're sharing with you, I guess that's as much as you know, but different reasons for why people stay longer and longer.
Well, it was a fun and interesting conversation. Maria, thank you so much for joining us. And
guys.
Judith, you shared a lot of your personal stories and actually, helped me understand your life a lot more now. We thank you for watching us today and today's episode. And if this episode resonated with you, share, subscribe, like, and leave us a comment.